as an audio guy, what I know is video can glitch and we'll keep watching it. But when audio starts cutting out, we'll turn it off.
But giving the viewer what they need to see and when they need to see it, that is our job as camera operators. A wide shot showing your entire stage being viewed on a screen this small is very hard. A person that is this big on the screen, and that's the dominant person that's talking, they are distracted now. You don't want that. You want your viewer to be distraction free as much as possible. There's some mistakes that you may be making that you may not even be realizing that you're making. Did I say that right? Anyway, today on the show, we're going to be talking about those mistakes, some very common mistakes, very simple mistakes, and how to fix them. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Dave, and I'm a church media creator, and I've got my buddy here, Curtis, the man, the myth, the legend, James, and he is as well. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. You know, I really am glad my parents gave me that middle name, the man, the myth, the legend. It's worked out well for me over time.
We are going to be talking today about mistakes, video mistakes. These are some pet peeves of mine that are mistakes. They're very easy to fix too. So I'm hoping that during the show you will learn a little something and be able to take what you learned back to your live stream this weekend. And by the time we get to Easter, which if you're watching this later, this is a week away from Easter, be able to make your Easter live stream that much more special for the people that can't be there. So I'm curious, just off the top of your head, Curtis, what is something that you have noticed before in live streams that you have thought, oh man, they really shouldn't do that? I'm just curious. This is not in our list or anything. This is right off the top of your head. Just something that you said, you know, if they would not do this, but do this, it would be better.
Well, I think that, you know, if I'm going to cheat, because we're talking about streaming, we're talking about video, but really the number one thing I have problems with is people's audio with their streaming. And that is that they're not really paying attention to the audio, that they get so focused on getting the shots and having the angles and switching and going through all these kind of things that they don't really meter what's going on. They don't make sure they're not overdriving on the other end, you know, making everybody's stuff fuzzy, making sure that there's some level of mix when it comes to instruments and vocals, as opposed to just what's in the room and things like that, that can really make it challenging. So as an audio guy, what I know is video can glitch and we'll keep watching it. But when audio starts cutting out, we'll turn it off. And we're willing to accept that video is going to maybe, you know, have some bumps in the road. If you're streaming, your stream has definitely had bumps in the road as far as video goes, because you got all of a sudden traffic problem or whatever. But if you can keep your audio quality at a decent level, and so I always tell people, make sure you're listening to your stream on what they're listening to your stream on. So don't listen in your super nice big headphones or whatever. Listen on your phone for a little while. Listen, go back and watch it on your computer and things like that, and realize it's just a lot of diversity, and that the audio is actually the most important part of your video, which sounds crazy, but it's actually true. And so that would be the number one mistake I see, is just really making sure your audio is solid so that you can build everything else around it. And if you can do that, then you have the foundation you need to create good video. And so that would be my number one.
So that is, you spoke like a real deep truth right there, and you probably didn't even realize it. Most people, just psychologically, the way we are built is that we will forgive video problems, we will forgive bad camera angles, we will forgive a glitchy or a low quality video stream, anything like that. We will forgive that if we are able to hear clearly and have good audio. Things aren't like overmodulated, there's no distortion, things are properly balanced. Then what happens in our brain is, because we're hearing everything, because we're hearing a good clean signal and the information is orally being brought to us, then our brain is going to compensate, and our imagination is going to compensate for what we are seeing or not seeing on the screen. We will make up the difference. We will, if we know the pastor's voice and we can hear the pastor's voice and he's a little fuzzy or a little glitchy or something, our brain is going to go ahead and compensate because we remember what he looks like from last week, or we've met him, we know what he looks like. So we're going to forgive that. And the experience is still going to be good for the viewer, considering that there's video problems, right? So we need to use that to our favor, Curtis. We understand how people work, then we can use that to our favor, and we can make sure that, above everything, if worse comes to worse, they can hear everything clearly and that message is still being driven home.
Yeah. So, and I think that it's also important that we think about the difference between the stream and recorded video, on demand, whatever, podcast, whatever, however you want to describe it.
Right.
So when you're watching a stream, your viewer is much more likely to actually be watching and engaged the whole time. Say it's a Sunday morning, 10:30, 11 o'clock, whenever your service is, and they're saying, well, I'm not at church, I can't be there today, I'm sick, I'm out of town, whatever, but I want to stream this service. Well, they're likely to actually sit down and really stream the service. Now, yeah, they may go in and, throw something in the oven for lunch or whatever, but they're far more likely to actually engage with the video. Whereas when we're making a resource that's for later use, they're probably not going to watch it hardly at all. They're going to hit play and they're going to be doing something else, multitasking. And so there is kind of a difference in video engagement between those two things that we should always consider as well. And that's why in the stream, we want to make sure we have diversity in camera angles and stuff like that if we can, because if we don't, we disconnect. Whereas a podcast a lot of times has one camera angle and you don't even notice because you're only paying attention about maybe an eighth of the time to the actual video. So yeah, that's why they can show so much video of radio shows. There's all kinds of radio shows we tune into and we see two guys in a radio studio. There's nothing going on. They're talking into microphones. There's nothing happening. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have a couple of angles if they're, that way, but we'll still watch that. We'll still listen mainly to those kinds of things. So live streaming is much more likely to have that video engagement.
Right. Well, and that's why the Joe Rogan podcast is so, phenomenally popular and stuff. It's basically a podcast. It's a radio show. The lighting, I've been cringing at their lighting for a long time, but that's all it is. It sounds really good and you can hear everything really clearly. The voices are rich and all that. So whether you're watching or just listening, the entire experience is great. Even if you are watching it, it's still compelling simply because the audio sounds really good. So focus on your audio. And if you have someone that can be the person that is focusing on the broadcast audio, that's even better. If you have someone that's dedicated to it, because they're sitting there with headphones and they're sitting in there with their phone and they plop their earbuds in and stuff, and they're listening to that mix back and forth and focusing on it and dedicating to it, which means you, as the person who's engineering the live stream, can focus on all the visuals and making sure all the other parts get really well. Or if you, the camera person, you can know that the video or the audio is being taken care of, and now all you need to do is focus and make sure that you're getting good images. Which actually brings me to my second point, Curtis, is one of the things that I see a lot, and this actually speaks to a greater thing, which I'll dovetail this into. But on the micro scale, one of the things that I see a lot is bad camera placement and bad camera work. Okay, now you and I, let's stipulate that we know that we're dealing with volunteers. In most cases, there's not the church. Some of the larger churches will have actually a media department, and they'll have a handful of people that are, doing the actual work on Sunday morning, and it's part of their job, or they are leading the work and they have some volunteers that they have spent considerable amounts of time training, and they're able to turn out, at video work at a much higher level. We are dealing with volunteers largely. That is completely understandable. It's completely understood, right? But it doesn't necessarily make it an excuse.
Yeah.
One of the things that I see a lot is people will set the camera and zoom it out so that you can see the stage. That way, when the guy walks on, you can see it. When the guy walks off, if you've got a drummer back over here and you've got a couple of guitar people and they're I'm looking at my screen to make sure my hands don't go crazy. But, you've got people spaced out across your stage, okay? And you want to make sure that you get everybody. Okay, that is a natural thing. Hey, Bob's playing the bass and Jim's playing the guitar. I want to make sure that I get them so that their families can see them and that they're on TV and everybody can see them and all that sort of stuff. That's a wonderful altruistic kind of a thought. That I want to make sure that everybody can be seen and all that. But that's not the viewer doesn't necessarily need that. What the viewer needs is they need to see what is going on and what the action is and what is happening in that moment. Okay, so if Jim is playing the guitar and Jim is, say, leading off the song with, 3 bars of something before the music comes in, maybe you have Jim framed up so that you can see him, and then you zoom out a little bit to the rest of the stage or to the worship pastor at that time, right? Creatively using, especially if you have one camera, this can be a challenge, which means you need to increase your skills and increase your forethought and creativity. But giving the viewer what they need to see and when they need to see it, that is our job as camera operators. Okay. Now, again, we go back to the concept of we have a very small volunteer team. I did a consult last week at a church that there are 2 people in the booth and they're doing 4 different jobs, so I understand that. There is a logic to setting the camera so that I can not have to keep moving it around and focusing on, Pro Presenter, making sure that the lyrics are coming up right and doing all that sort of stuff. I understand that. That sometimes it just is what it is. But as much as possible, when you can, you should be following the action on the stage. A wide shot showing your entire stage being viewed on a screen this small is very hard for the person to see. When they are looking at a person that is this big on the screen and that's the dominant person that's talking, it's really hard for them. They are distracted now. They're sitting there squinting. I can't see. They're trying. Can I zoom up this video? Well, it's grainy. Even the little bit of zoom that I could get. You don't want that. You want your viewer to be distraction free as much as possible, and you can help that by properly framing your shots, making sure that you're following the action, especially when it gets down to the actual Bible study time or the sermon time. When your pastor is the focus for the next 40 minutes, you can get a medium shot, like waist up shot, when they're standing at the pulpit or at the lectern or at the pub table or what have you. You can do that medium shot, and that gives some room for the pastor to move from one side to the other a little bit without completely leaving the frame. But once they start leaving the frame, once they start walking across the stage and coming up the aisle, or, some pastors roam a little bit, some pastors roam a lot. But once that starts happening, you want to make sure that you're tracking them and keeping them in the frame. And when they stop, you want to stop so that the viewer is not distracted. The viewer is able to follow the action and not wonder what's going on. Oh, he left the frame. Who's running this? It causes distractions, and we want to minimize distractions as much as possible. Did I miss anything on that, or did I harp on it too hard?
No, I think there's a couple of things that are worth mentioning along those lines too, though, where when we're talking about shots, there's obviously we all have budgets we're trying to work with, and so we can afford this, we can't afford that. If you're a single camera setup, obviously the quality of your camera matters, but if that's 1A, 1B would actually be the quality of your tripod. Mm-hmm. Because if you're having to follow and move while you're live, your tripod had better be smooth. Right. Otherwise, everybody is just feeling jostled around, and your zooms need to be crazy smooth. You'll notice when you watch live events, whether it's a news or it's a sporting event or whatever, you seldomly see a zoom in or out live. Almost all your zooms are going to happen off camera, off live feed. Now, when you're watching a produced television show, you'll see zoom for effect and things like that, but they'll take that shot 40 times and then the editor will go decide what to do about it. And so just realize you want to move as little as possible while you're live. Now, if you got a pastor who's walking, you need to be able to follow him. Your tripod's crazy important at that point. So really consider your tripod. The other thing is having a side shot, a wide shot, a safe shot that you can jump to for just a few seconds, even if the quality isn't as good as your main camera, it just provides you with a lot of options. It's your emergency backup shot. It never has to change. You don't have to have someone man that camera. It's just your safety shot that says, okay, the pastor just referenced to the keyboard player and he's looking at the keyboard player. I can either zoom out real fast or pan over real fast, or I could switch to this wide shot for just a second and then I can cut back, or I can change my zoom and then cut back. I can make the transition. If you don't have that, one of the things you can do to keep from making a lot of live movement is use your presentation slides to transition. If there's a title slide for the sermon, you're maybe at a little wider shot because you've got the whole worship team or a lot of the worship team on the stage in your shot. Title sermon slide comes up, go to that full screen, zoom into your pastor shot, then switch out of it. Do what you can to keep from moving too much in a live setting, because it's hard to move smoothly. Sometimes your camera's going to autofocus to the wrong thing. You're going to have jumpiness or whatever, especially if you don't have a good tripod. So just consider those things when you're spending your money and you're spending your time. What can you do to cover up some of the less smooth movements that you're going to have with kind of a single camera setup? So you've got different tools you can use for that that'll help.
Absolutely. And I'll share a little secret. When I took over the live stream at our church, Curtis, this was before your time, I brought my computer up and we had the one camera, and I brought one of my webcams up. Webcams, they're $70-$80 for really good ones, believe it or not. Our media booth is in the balcony, so we have every shot at that point was an elevated shot. But what I did was I used a webcam, inexpensive, set it on a tripod, put it in the center of the balcony, which in my case was right in front of me, thankfully. And then I kind of framed it up so that was our establishing shot. That shows the entire room. And I fixed it so that it was the front pew or so, and then the space in between the pews and the stage. And then you could see the stage, you could see everything that was going on there. So what we would do is, and I took one of the monitors, Curtis, that we had up there, and I did a little splitter so that I could take that monitor and move it down to where Lisa, our camera operator, is, and let her be able to see what is going out on the live stream. The program output, I was able to let her see what everyone else is seeing. So without us even having to communicate with comms or anything like that, low budget, she was able to see that when I knew that when something was going to be happening that she needed to catch, I would cut to that wide shot and give her, and she'd see, he's on the wide shot. I can move around and zoom up and get everything set. And then when I saw that she had everything set, I would cut back to her shot, and it was a better shot. For the viewer, it was a much better experience. And we were rubbing two sticks together and blowing on it, trying to get a little spark started, but it was working, and no one really knew the difference. And everybody, Curtis, when I made that one little change, everybody started saying, wow, the live stream looks amazingly better. And that told me that I was accomplishing the goal of causing less distractions and giving the viewer what they meant or what they needed to see. And it was very, very low budget. So food for thought on that.
You said, you couldn't communicate, but the truth is you did communicate. And that's one of the things on my list is communicate. Obviously, you want to be able to communicate. You want to have headsets, or you want to have some form of communication with your camera operators, even if it's just line of sight, if you can see each other and you can kind of be like, hey, I'm cueing you, whatever. But you don't always have that option. But the communication that takes place beforehand is, okay, find your shot, stabilize your shot, and then wait for me to come to your shot. Mm-hmm. Don't do anything until I move away from your shot. Then change your shot. I'll wait for you to stabilize your shot, and then stay right there and wait for me to take your shot. Mm-hmm. That's communication ahead of time that helps your camera operator feel like they're not just like, oh my gosh, they're going to cut to me. Oh, they're going to cut to me. Really, you do want to be able to communicate in some form, but that's not always an option. And so there's a lot of ways to communicate. They're relatively cheap. You could even call each other and have an open line on your phone with an AirPod in or something, and just say, okay, then what you do? Well, you're the director. Okay, cutting to camera one, coming to you, hey, can you give me a wider shot? Watch out, I know he's about to walk down the stairs, whatever. And you get that kind of communication. There's a lot of ways to communicate. I wouldn't recommend text message because Sometimes it takes forever for that sucker to come through, but there are a lot of different messaging apps and things out there that would be pretty sufficient. It just takes a little longer than being able to talk. And so a lot of ways to get to talk with each other. Communication is key, even if you can't communicate during service, communicate beforehand.
Exactly. I've actually got a comm unit from Hollyland. They make really good comm units. They sent me a package with one of their actual comm units. You put the headset on and you got the microphone and it's all digital and it's wonderful and stuff that I'm going to be doing a review on. So be looking for that. But what Lisa and I've been using, we ran to Walmart and got a couple of those little walkie-talkie, like a dual little walkie-talkie set. They're very cheap. And, we got the little earpiece. And so she's got an earpiece in there and I can click the thing and she hears bloop, bloop, and she knows I need to pay attention to what's coming. And then I'll say, hey, can you tighten up this shot? Do something like that. And then she just clicks back, bloop, bloop. And then, that message received. She doesn't have to talk. She doesn't have to disturb anybody around her in the service by whispering or talking or anything like that. So great solutions that are out there. Communication is the key. Restream is like the tool that is one of the most indispensable tools that we have right now. Curtis and I are using Restream. And what we're doing is, I'm broadcasting from my house. He's at the office at the church. We have limited bandwidth. We don't, whether we have gigantic upstream pipes or whether we have like very small upstream pipes, we like to use Restream because the only thing we need to do is send the stream out to one destination, one location, which is Restream. We send it to Restream, and then we've been able to connect our YouTube and our Facebook channels on there, and we can turn them on or off individually or at the same time. And so Restream takes what we're sending there and sends it out to the appropriate platforms. It sends it out to YouTube, sends it out to Facebook, sends it out to Twitch, sends it out to Twitter, to Insta. Whatever you have as far as the platform goes, you can add to Restream. So you can stream one signal and then have it amplified and multiplied and syndicated out to whatever platforms, including homegrown platforms. If someone in your church has developed a streaming server and you need to send to that as well, not a problem. You can just plug in the RTMP information and put the key in there and boom, you're streaming to it just like it was YouTube. So go to getrestream.com. It is a fantastic service. I can't recommend it enough. We use it here. We use it at the church. We've been using it for years and it's never really failed us. So getrestream.com.
Yeah, and one of the best things about it is the way that OBS just plays so nice with it. The way it basically just plugs together. It makes life easier. I saw, one of our comments said, they're using OBS with Restream. It's almost like using just one thing when you do that. They've done a really good job with that. Makes it pretty easy to use.
Yeah, it does. They have, one of the things I haven't talked about is that with Restream, they have their integration with OBS is really cool. You can log in and then you've got some panels that you can add to OBS, including a unified chat, which is cool. So if you have people that are on Facebook, on Twitch, on Twitter, and on YouTube, then you can see in a unified chat who's coming from where. And when you reply, you can reply through that one channel or just out at large, which is really cool. If for nothing else, it lets you see who and what people are talking, who and what they are talking about, which is really cool. And when you're doing a live stream, even if you're live streaming your church service, the chat is a big part of the engagement. The chat in a live stream for a church service is more akin to sitting next to somebody, right? So we're not going to talk in the middle of the service, Curtis, if you and I are sitting next to each other, but we engage with each other just through our movement, our body movement, me putting my arm up and patting you on the back, as I'm resting my arm, whatever. You can't do that in a live stream. So having the chat and being able to ask questions, say hi, say yes, amen, whatever, that provides that sense of community when you don't have your physical community around you. So getrestream.com. It's cool. Do it. I can't say it enough.
The question is, do our viewers really believe that you don't talk during the message?
I do talk.
That's the question we have. Because I even watch movies with you. You talk during the movies. So if you talk during a movie, you're definitely talking during the message. I'm sure it's like, oh, that's so true or something. Maybe. Yeah. Or it's, hey, what are you doing for lunch? Yeah.
I should start yelling at the pastor like I yell at the TV screen.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that. So,
watch
all
our
right,
live
Dave.
stream
So
this week.
You've gone through some of the video mistakes that you've seen, the things that you watch. What's some more stuff that you're thinking of?
I want to talk about mindset for just a second. That's probably the biggest thing. And I think if your mindset is in the right place, then a lot of these things will almost come naturally to you. The fixing of these mistakes, you will see these mistakes because your mindset is in the right place. And the mindset I'm talking about is the difference between, goodness, my nose is itchy. The mindset I'm talking about is the difference between we're live streaming our service and I'm making a television broadcast. Okay. And I know that in most people's minds that those two things are not the same. But in all practicality, they are. Because, Curtis, you and I would say a vast majority of the people who are watching this, who will watch this, who are driving in front of my house, all of these people are watching television at some point throughout the course of their week, okay? And when I say watching television, that encompasses a wide breadth of media types, okay? So they're watching on the news, the 6 o'clock news. I was at my parents' house for the past few days. They still, 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock, they're watching. My dad DVRs it, but, he part of his evening routine is what was the 6 o'clock news, and he'll skim through it and watch it. So he is watching
time to fold up the newspaper and set it aside so you can watch the news.
That's right. So he's still watching the news, and then he'll watch, a replay of NCIS. He'll go to Hulu. He'll go to the Fox News, the Fox Nation or something, and watch a documentary, what have you. He's watching content that is from a whole bunch of different platforms, a whole bunch of different services. Some of it is over the air. Some of it is on DirecTV. Some of it is on demand. Some of it is through an app. But he's all doing it right there on that big TV screen. And the stuff that he's doing on the big TV screen, without exception, can all be done. Where'd my phone go? I keep misplacing this thing right here on my desk. Can be done on his phone as well. So he can watch the local news broadcast on his phone. So the device is irrelevant now. It can be on any device, and who and what type of content it is also becoming largely irrelevant, because it's not just meant for your phone or meant for your computer or meant for your screen. It's meant for all of them. So we have to get into the mindset that we're not live streaming our service, quote unquote. Okay. That is a mentality that can lead to laziness, for lack of a better term. Okay. Not an intentional laziness, but I'm just live streaming the service. The idea being I need to have a camera that's catching what's going on in this room so that someone out there can see it. Okay. That is not a purpose, intentional action that you're doing. That is the equivalent of a security camera, right? Your security cameras basically catch what's going on in your living room or out on your driveway or when the guy brings the package. Okay, that's not an optimal viewing experience for the person who we're trying to serve. That's another thing, is we need to realize that we're here to serve, okay? If you're live streaming, if you're broadcasting your service, if you're running the camera, doing the technical directing, doing the switching, running the audio, whatever, your audience, the people that you are quote unquote working for in those moments, is not the people in the room on the other side of the wall or, down on the floor. It's not those people. Okay. It's not the people next to you. It's the person that is sitting at home and watching this. It's the person that will watch the replay of this on Wednesday. It is the person that is traveling and has this on their phone holder, and they just kind of glance at it here and there, but they're largely listening to it. You are providing them the window in, and it's not a fly on the wall type of a window that you should be providing. It is an intentional thing, showing them what they need to see when they need to see it. When he goes to the scripture and starts reading it, if he's got the slides that have the scripture on there, you want to make sure that that is coming up on the screen for the person so they can read along. Whether it's a full screen or a lower third, providing it there for them gives them the ability to interact just a little bit more. It's a professional touch. Now, people always say, we're not here to put on a show or anything. I understand. What you're really saying And what you should be really saying when you make that statement is, we are here to do ministry. Okay? Instead of saying, we're not here to put on a show. I didn't come here to watch a show. We don't have to have this perfect production and all that sort of stuff. Okay. We're here to do ministry. Okay? Part of our ministry is bringing our best and doing our best, using the gifts and talents that God has given us to help amplify the gospel, which is what we're trying to do here. We're going to use the technology to amplify the gospel so that people's lives are changed as a result of the gospel and their interaction with the gospel and the Holy Spirit through the tools that we are using to get that message out to them. Okay? So, not putting on a show? Yeah, you are. If you stood back, it was so funny, Curtis. I was doing a consult at a church, a small church up in North Texas this last week, and I had the pastor and the worship pastor and the guy who runs the stuff in the sound booth, and we were just sort of talking about some of these things. And one of the things that I said was that what we do on a Sunday morning, whether it's the worship team on the stage, whether it's the media team in the back, whether it's the pastor, anything like that, this is not a unique circumstance, right? This is not a unique thing that we do on Sunday mornings. When you step back from the ministry aspect of what we're doing and look at it from a technical standpoint, what we are doing is producing a live event, okay? So, a Sunday morning worship service is technically very similar to a concert, Garth Brooks concert at Billy Bob's, right? It is technically akin to a conference that you and I may go to where we go in and what is one at Promise Keepers? Do you remember those? Do they still do Promise Keepers?
I don't know if it's still out there or not.
These things all have one thing in common. They have a keynote speaker or two or three, right? Well, we do that. On Sunday mornings, we have a keynote speaker. It's the pastor. It's the sermon, right? They may have some music beforehand. We do that. We have a mini concert. So we're putting on a live event every single week. So the technical aspects of that are very similar to everything else that people are experiencing out in the world. It's our job to try to present as best we possibly can, give understanding we may have limitations. That just brings out creativity. We don't need to diminish what we do because we're live streaming the service. We don't want to put on a show. No, we want to bring our best and use the tools, use the technology to produce the best possible thing that we can. Just like the artisans in the Bible, when the Lord started putting out the requirements for the tabernacle or the temple, and he's saying, I want this type of gold. I want these types of jewels. Go and get the artisans, the jewelers, the artisans, the stonemasons, the people that can carve the wood, that can do all this sort of stuff. You know, the people that can make gold statues, you know, or edifices or whatever went into it and stuff. He was very specific about that. Now, what does that have to do with a personal relationship with our God? Nothing, because I can go into my closet, kneel down, and have a conversation with him, and the Holy Spirit can speak to me. I don't have to do it at the church. I don't have to do it at the big, beautiful building. But God said, this is something that you're doing for me, and I want you to bring the best. That message comes down to us when we are doing something that is going to be involving other people, whether it's playing your music, whether it's mixing the sound, whether it's producing the live stream. In this case, we are making television. We need to be thinking that. And when you're thinking that, then you're going to have a different set of eyes. You will say, okay, if I'm making television, when I watch television, when I watch a live broadcast of something, they don't do it like we do. They do it like this. So I can do that by zooming my camera up and tightening the shot on the pastor. Now it looks more like television versus a camera at the back of the room and, you know, just catching anything and everything that's on the screen. Did I miss anything there?
Well, I think that, you know, the concept here is making sure we understand, obviously every Sunday morning is a production. Mm-hmm. We're putting on a production. We have lights, we have sound, we have video. Live, we're putting on a production. We're streaming a production. Streaming has to go through a producing process for it to even exist.
Right.
So there's no question we're always putting on a production. The thing is, and the layer that you're talking about that changes things is, it's not about the production. It's about the ministry. And so there's a why difference here. So the ministry may modify how we put on the production. Whereas, like, very similar components to a concert, most churches don't run their audio at the same level as a concert because they want people to be able to hear each other and talk. There are times when lights are up in the room because they want people to interact. There are camera angles and shots that are more about creating an intimate connection feeling than they are necessarily about getting the perfect angle. There's times when our lighting won't be great for video because we are in a worship setting and it's ministry focused. And so all those things mean the production is subject to the ministry. The show is subject to the ministry.
Right.
It's the tool that we're able to use for the ministry. And by using it in that way, we're not saying, well, we're putting on a show. Well, we are putting on a show, but only from the concept of this is a production that has to take place for us to use this medium. So, like, for instance, Matthew 28:19, the Great Commission tells us to go and make disciples. It tells us to share the gospel, to spread the good news. And that's what we talk about here. We talk about amplifying the gospel. Well, streaming provides us the opportunity to share the gospel in a lot of different ways. And we talk about live streaming. We can talk about the philosophies behind live streaming, the difference between being in church physically and watching church online and all those kinds of things. But video does provide us with this amazing tool that means, for instance, right now we have people listening from probably at least 2 other countries right this minute. And we're able to share the gospel and the good news of Christ in all kinds of places without using production. We would then say, well, we don't want to use that tool to reach the world. We're going to choose to use this tool instead, when we can use both tools. We can go. I'll be taking an international mission trip here in just a few months and leading a team because I believe going and physically being someplace is crazy important. But I also believe that there's a way for us to impact people around the world when we can't go. I can't go on an international mission trip every week or every month, but I can be a resource and a help, but only through production. I've got a camera set up. I've got a microphone set up. I've got windows open on my computer that are doing different things, that I'm connected with Dave at his place, and he's producing this show right now there. And I think that as we navigate those kinds of things, we have to realize the production is the tool, just like any other tool we use in ministry. When I go on mission trip, I'll use a plane to go. I won't swim. I couldn't possibly swim that far. I won't get on a boat. I'll use a plane. Why? Because it's the most efficient thing for me to use. When we get there, we'll use vehicles. We won't ride around on bikes. But once we get into the villages, we'll probably walk around a lot. We're going to use different things to make that effective. And that's what we can do with video or anything, any audio, any lighting, any of those kinds of things. We use those as tools. They're the slaves of the ministry, though. The ministry can never be slave to the production. And that's what most people are saying when they say, well, we don't want to put on a show. I agree with you. In the context of what you're saying, totally agree. We're not here to put on a show. This is a worship service. But there is a production that has this undergirding effect that's foundational to what we're doing. But it needs to be the slave and the tool to the ministry that's taking place. And that's what we want to make sure we're doing. We use the equipment. It doesn't use us. We use it to amplify the gospel. It's used by the gospel as opposed to it using the gospel. It doesn't get to be in charge. And I think that's where we just put things in order. Then all of a sudden, everybody's talking about the same.
There's one thing that people, I think, a mistake that people are making, Curtis, that they may not even realize that they're making. And you talked about it when you were talking about the audio mixing, having the get some earbuds, get some, $20 earbuds from Walmart that aren't even that great. Grab a pair of those and listen and see, how does it sound? Is it too, is the mix right for this lowest common denominator, right? You're monitoring the way people monitor. When it comes to video, I do this, and I would encourage everybody else to do it. Turn the live stream on your phone and take a look at what is actually happening as a viewer, okay? One of the things that it's going to do is it's going to give you the viewer's context of what they're seeing, especially if it's on your phone. And in my case, it sits on the phone and it sits kind of underneath my monitor. out of the way from the broadcast, so it's not obstructing me, but I can glance at it and see what it tells me is this shot is too wide, because I'm having to squint to see the pastor. Hey, Lisa, can you please tighten up this shot just a little bit? Okay, now on the phone, it looks better, which means I know it's going to look fine on television or whatever. Monitoring the actual live thing. And another thing that it does is it lets you know if there's an actual problem that's happening. So if the software that you're using, I'm talking to the engineers right now. So I'm using vMix. So I have down here at the bottom, you guys can't see it, but at the bottom I have the record button and I've got the stream button. And then I've got like some little stats and stuff like that. If I want to know how things are going, I'm looking down here going 30 frames a second. Render time is 8 milliseconds. GPU, 72%. CPU, 12%. Okay. So I'm squinting at all this information. Now I just missed a cut. I missed a cut because I was looking at this and I can't see it right now. If you have your live stream happening on a phone or something in front of you, and all of a sudden it goes black, that's telling you something's wrong. If all of a sudden it is like super duper pixelated and glitchy looking and stuff, hey, that's not supposed to be happening. And then you can start looking, is there something going on here? You can run a speed test. You can say, hey, Bob, check your phone real quick. Is it my connection? Is it your connection? You can start troubleshooting and fixing the problem, because there could be good chance that if it's like that for you, it could be like that for the other 25 people that are watching it. Let's try to get it fixed. So it's a fantastic remote monitor. It's real time, given a 10-second or a 15-second delay depending on your internet connection and stuff. So I would definitely be doing that. It will give you a different perspective. Curtis, do you have anything else?
Yeah, well, you were talking about headphones. There's a company called KZ that makes in-ear monitors. You can buy them on Amazon. These are the $50 version. It's actually what I play with on Sunday mornings. I wear $50 in-ears that I think run the same quality as like the $100 Sures or Westons. I have a pair of Westons that I go back and forth between. For different use, these are just as good for half the price. They also have a $20 one. Hey, it's not as good as these, but it's better than the Walmart stuff. They give you a little more isolation, better drivers. I have a set of those. We actually use those in our youth room a lot of the time for our students. And so there are options out there for you to use that'll even give you some level of isolation for really cheap. That's actually good quality. So I would definitely recommend you check those out as an option. And I think that when we talk about video, we're talking about something that we're all wanting to use. We're wanting to all use well. And it's important that we continually evaluate and say, hey, am I making some key mistakes? Or, do I have it all together? And I feel like these are some good tools for everyone to be able to use. And so it's our desire that you have the tools that you need. And so you can always be with us. We have other resources available to you, like a video that'll show up over here, I'm betting. And then we have just our weekly show, shorts coming in. So make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, become a part of everything we're doing here. Let your friends know about what we're doing, because we just want to help you accomplish the ministry that God set before you. And so we're so glad that you've been with us today, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great week. Just trying to help people see and understand and hear what God's doing as we amplify the gospel together as church media creators. Thanks a lot.